You're about to listen to another Bonversation. Bonversations feature the most interesting and insightful people in the act realm and beyond. Every episode is made possible by people like you who value and support independent media. Now here's your host, JLB.
It wasn't a tent, it was this magnificent thing.
Today we're talking about predictive programming with possibly the world's leading expert on predictive programming, Mr. Tim Ozman himself, who is joining us for his fourth appearance here on Bonversations. It is July 25, 2024. And the questions are, how are these things appearing in movies, TV shows, songs, other pop culture artifacts? How are these things appearing and seemingly ahead of time predicting what we see happen in the media, in the news? So, for example, this Trump so-called shooting, and we'll get to whether or not that was a real shooting later on, but let's just take on face value that there is a news story about President Trump being shot. How are there things in movies and TV shows that appear to know ahead of time that that's going to happen? They appear that way. Or is this all just apophenia and we're finding patterns post facto because that's what humans do? These kinds of questions are so much more with Tim Ozman from the Infinite Plane Society. Like I said, making his fourth appearance here at Bonversations. Tim, great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I can't believe it's been nearly 6 months, but it seems like in the last month, 6 months worth of content has happened. So I think we have a lot to talk about, and I'm glad we can get into the conversation about what predictive programming really is. Is it apophenia? Is it weird coincidences? Is there something more? Or is there, as I think, a more mundane solution or explanation for it? So I hope we can come to some kind of conclusion here, or at least put some more information on the table.
Well, I want to jump straight into the discussion with you, and something that I ran by before we started recording. We just said hello before we pressed the record button for this here Bonversation. I said to you, man, I'm seeing in my Twitter feed, I've noticed there's a few people who seem to be telling me or telling their tweet followers to stop paying attention to the news, stop paying attention to the politics. And some of them are very preachy, in my opinion. It's almost like, for a start, they say you are being tricked, you are being deceived, your attention is being harvested, whatever. It's like, well, hold on. If this person's tweeting about it, then aren't they also giving it attention and then trying to get attention through tweeting about it? And the way I see it, I find this whole spectacle of politics very entertaining. And sometimes interesting things come up as a result of talking about it. So I like following this stuff, Tim, and I think that you do as well. So my question for you is, what do you think about these people who are trying to tell me and trying to tell you that somehow we're the bad guys for paying attention to the politics?
I think they're misguided. I don't want to say that they're agents or that they're being influenced, but this is misdirection, because if you want to see how anything works, you have to be informed. The way I describe it, the masses are misinformed. Those who examine what they're misinformed on, who examine the fake news critically, become informed non-believers. So we have to know why we don't believe. We have to understand what we're being told. And to turn away from it and just call it a distraction is not only dismissive, but it leaves you underinformed. And being underinformed is a weaker position than being misinformed. So to me, the only position where you have any situational awareness is knowing what's going on in your world and in everyone else's world. So I do not understand this idea of not paying attention. I go the complete opposite. If they say don't pay attention to this, I double down and get all the facts.
Well, I'm happy for people to not pay attention. If they're not going to pay attention, then just stop paying attention and go away. Don't tell me not to pay attention. And then if you're going to use Twitter to tell me not to pay attention, then you are also giving it attention. There's like a certain, I'm not sure the word for it, there's like some kind of absurdism going on here. It's like, okay, if this person doesn't want to pay attention to politics, then don't pay attention, don't tweet about it, just go away. Why is my Twitter feed full of these people telling me not to pay attention? It's very bizarre stuff. But I am paying attention. I watched the entire Republican National Convention, the fourth day especially. I found it very entertaining. Did you watch any of the Republican National Convention, Tim Ozman? Did you see the Hulk Hogan himself up on stage? Did you see Dana White? Did you see these people getting up there and making quite a show of the whole thing?
Yeah, it's an incredible spectacle, and Hulk Hogan was the peak. And it's so on brand for Trump and for our times. People have compared that to Idiocracy. The thing about the Trump-Hulk Hogan connection that I thought was a big tell is he said, when they try to shoot the president, enough is enough.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
I'm like, wait, Hulk Hogan just quoted the Illuminati playing card, Enough is Enough, where they have the sniper, and it looks like a bullet whizzing by Trump's ear. So I thought that's got to be a planted line, considering Hulk Hogan is very well represented in 9/11 predictive programming.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan, you talked about the triangle of love. Jesse Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the love, man, that's going to supercharge the mega powers and tear down the Twin Towers. Yeah.
And there were a couple of other things in his speech that I thought were big tells, as far as he described the last time he saw Trump looking down at him. It was back during one of these Hulkamania fights where he had blood running down his forehead. So he compared these two scenes, bloody forehead on Hulk years ago and Trump looking up, to 7/13 where Trump had blood on his face and Hulk's looking at him as, oh, that's my hero. And this precedes both of them leading to their victories, the Hulkamania and then Trump 2024. But I think the clue here is both of them are World Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Famers, and both of them would be very well apprised of the technique of blading. And I kind of thought that was a sly kind of a nod wink to Trump, and Trump blew a kiss. I don't know if you caught that, but that was my take on it. What was yours?
Well, this Enough is Enough card, so this is one of the Illuminati New World Order playing cards from Steve Jackson Games. I've got it on my screen in front of me. Here's what the text says. So the image, I'm sure most of the listeners have seen this card at least a few times. It's kind of like a purple... What's the word for that? Like it's a purplish, cartoonish picture of a person's face. Some people say it kind of looks like Trump. Some guy who's angry, he's got his mouth open, he's baring his teeth. And then it's got lots of colourful triangles, and it's quite bizarre artwork. So that's the art of this Enough is Enough card. Here's the text. It says, at any time, at any place, our snipers can drop you. Have a nice day. Now what's going on there? So what I think you're saying here, Tim, is that you've got this Enough is Enough card. It's talking about snipers. And part of the artwork, too, it does have like an orange going through the middle, which I guess you could interpret as sort of like the whiz of a bullet going past what kind of looks like Trump's face. So I guess you could interpret it that way. And they're talking about snipers. This guy says enough is enough. Hulk Hogan said, as part of his Republican National Convention speech, enough was enough. Because he was talking about how when they tried to kill my hero, enough was enough.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
So you're tying all these things together. What's the interpretation of this, Tim? I don't know what to make of all of this. You tell me.
My interpretation of it is that our history is being written in advance. And if you just look at every single fake event, every fake event is pre-scripted, has actors, directors, full complicity of government and media working as one. And these fake events, no matter what we say, go into the history books. And if you look at history, as Napoleon said, it's lies agreed upon. Not agreed upon by we at the bottom, but agreed upon by the power elite. And so my take on it is that they write our history in advance when it comes to big events. And when it comes to these big events, they reinforce it with an echo chamber effect, which means it's going to be foreshadowed in entertainment, in the on-the-street interactions with the celebrities and politicians, and then it's going to be more or less just saturating our minds like a marketing campaign, so that when it happens on the news, it just seems like a natural consequence of what came before. So I look at predictive programming as a form of marketing more than anything. And who's going to be spreading these messages? Well, it's going to be these popular figures, people like Hulk Hogan. And I mentioned, he and Randy Savage, who he was invoking, had all kinds of Twin Tower foreshadowing. when they were in WWE.
Jesse Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the law of man that's going to supercharge the mega powers and tear down the Twin Towers.
Yes, man. What were your thoughts then?
Oh, yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit into Miss Elizabeth's wrist right there. And when her muscles were torn, my muscles were torn. When her bone was bruised right there, I felt the pain. Hulk Hogan felt the pain, and I can still feel the pain right now. And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh, yeah, right now, tonight, on prime time, yeah.
So it shows you that they're part of this, what I consider to be a group of actors who also add to the news. They cross the lines. They're propaganda agents. So I do think that we live with a very controlled media, and that their whole concept here is a form of, again, advanced marketing. And it's not just predictive programming, it's concurrent, which I discussed with those links that I gave you that show the different predictive programming instances with the Trump shooting. And when I say concurrent, I mean on the day Trump gets shot at, you have this trailer drop for Captain America that has a near identical scene. So that's not exactly predictive. Nobody would have seen it before the event, but it happens like right at the same time. And this is what I mean by the echo chamber effect, where you're watching the news or you're watching Netflix, you're getting the same messages. And I can find this consistently across the board. And I've been observing this for years. And it's pretty much, if you ask me, standard operating procedure.
Well, you mentioned the Team America trailer. I want to come back and talk about that one later. Let's rewind a little bit. You also mentioned the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan with their Twin Tower references. So for the listeners, I'm going to insert a clip here. This is from 1989. One of the first voices you're going to hear from this clip is Vince McMahon himself. So this is a number of different sections from that broadcast of the night spliced together because they mention the Twin Towers. So what you're about to hear is it hasn't been spoofed together by somebody to mock up anything. No, it's just a few different sections from the same broadcast of the night where they mention the Twin Towers. Take a listen to this.
We're going to have one whale of a main event right here after this commercial message. Twin Towers, take it, Mean Gene.
With me at this time, the Slickster, Akeem, the African Dream, and a Big Boss Man. Gentlemen, is this the match you wanted all along, or are you going to continue your terrorist attacks on the mega powers and the defenseless Elizabeth? What do you want?
Oh, yeah, we are anxiously awaiting the presents, and they're just about on their way now. The Twin Towers, and Akeem, along with the Big Boss Man.
And they are indeed towers, McMahon. Look at the size of these two.
Huge.
All right, thank you, Vince McMahon. Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, the lovely Elizabeth. Three people working as one with one goal in mind, to defeat, or should I say demolish, the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan, you talked about the triangle of love. Jesse Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the law of man that's going to supercharge the mega powers and tear down the Twin Towers.
Yes, man. What were your thoughts then?
Oh, yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit into Miss Elizabeth's wrist right there. And when her muscles were torn, my muscles were torn. When her bone was bruised right there, I felt the pain. Hulk Hogan felt the pain, and I can still feel the pain right now. And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh, yeah, right now, tonight, on prime time, yeah.
So that is multiple references to destroying the Twin Towers, and the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Tim Ozman, we're talking about predictive programming, and you're saying that our history is being written in advance. Let me ask you this. This is a tough question. It's for you, it's for all the listeners, and it's for me as well. I ask myself this question regularly. Do these people actually know what they're doing? Did Hulk Hogan know? Did Macho Man Randy Savage, oh yeah, did he know? Did any of those people, did Mean Gene or the lovely Elizabeth, did any of them actually know that what they were doing was talking about an event that was going to happen 12 years later? Do you think they're consciously aware of what they're doing?
I don't think they know the full significance of their words if they're merely actors reciting lines. I'd look higher. I look for who are the directors, who fed them the lines, and who's at the top of this. And the best way I can explain it is security clearance and need-to-know basis. So, for example, when you say the moon landing's fake, a lot of people will say, well, there were 400,000 contractors. No way that many people could keep a secret. Well, there's no reason to presume that 400,000 people would have to know the details about the operation. There's a point where it goes behind the veil. And I would say that most of the people reciting lines on the world stage are not behind that veil, but they're at levels. They're compartmentalized.
So you think that Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and Mean Gene and the rest of the people involved in those scenes that we just looked at, you think someone has written a script, whether it's Vince McMahon or whoever, he has his script writers, and it's all planned out. Oh, in your promotion of your fight with the Boss Man and Hakeem the African Dream, we want you to make references to Twin Towers. Like that's going to be your main promotion. Like you're going to bring down the Twin Towers, going to come crumbling down. Like it's like a scriptwriter who's done it. So the scriptwriter is in on it, or do you think even the scriptwriter doesn't actually understand what they're doing? Like what I'm trying to get, and you don't know, and I don't know. We're just trying to come up with our best guesses here. But what I'm trying to establish here is, do these people actually know, or is there some other explanation? You know what I'm trying to say? Is there someone in the know who knows those Twin Towers are coming down in real life? So on this WWF episode, we're going to make references to it for some reason. How confident are you that they know what they're doing, Tim, is my question. And it's not just a question for you, it's a question for all of my guests from now on, and for me, and for all the listeners. How confident are we that these people actually know?
As an example, when I was in the military, we would do these field exercises, and I wasn't allowed to know what was going on with the Patriot missile systems. That wasn't my MOS. So we would move in these big units. I was a commander's driver. There were certain places I couldn't go, and everything was very stratified. So there were hundreds of us moving in concert, in unison, everything moving like a big juggernaut machine flawlessly. But those of us at the bottom had no idea where we were going, where we were, how long we would stay. Everything was on a need-to-know basis, and what characterized it was just obey and follow the rules in the scripts. So we're looking at compartmentalization in a pyramidal hierarchical structure. And just like with any movie, if you go to a big movie production, the stagehand, the crew, the craft services, they have no clue what's going on in the main scene between the star actor and his antagonist in the final culmination resolution. That stuff's out of their purview. So I think you can just rule out most of the people knowing. Or for example, we look at these mass shooting events that we often discuss. There's no reason to think that the people reading lines to the news badly are fully appraised of the bigger agenda behind it, the big capstone event that involves politics and government fusing with the first responders and the police and teachers. There's no way. So you have to look, it has to be, to function, it has to be compartmentalized. There's no reason to think that every NASA employee is aware of any potential tomfoolery when it gets to some of their more egregious and obviously hoaxed operations. So I think it's safe to say that no, they're ignorant, and there's levels of ignorance, and it's protective ignorance for the mission and for the individuals.
Well, I think you're right about that. And I've had people say to me that if my theory about ancient history being a hoax, if that's correct, then how about all of the experts? How about all of the professors and the lecturers? And I'm like, they believe the crap they're saying. They're not in on it. They read books, and they must have really enjoyed history because they decided to stay in academia. So they've done their 3-year degree or whatever. They've done some postgrad work as well. They've probably been at this institution for 5, 6, 7 years just learning history. They believe all of it, and they're passionate about it. Like, people are not going to study history unless they're interested in it. And if they're interested in it, probably they were reading those books when they were kids. So this person has always believed this crap. And they've just read more books. They've just written more papers or whatever. They fully believe it. They're not in on it. So as far as the history hoax is concerned, I don't think it's a matter of are people in on it. No, they just don't know any better. As for NASA, I've heard people say that, Tim. Oh, how about the hundreds of thousands? How about the hundreds of thousands? What hundreds of thousands? Where are these people getting these numbers? They're just parroting stuff that they've heard from others. That's all, in my opinion. What say you?
So, yeah, those are weak arguments. And I agree that most of the people who we see as promoting this stuff are believers. Because if they didn't really believe it, they couldn't sell it so passionately. You know, people get mad at Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I'm like, I listened to his podcast. He believes it. He's in love with outer space. If he thought any of this wasn't real, he wouldn't be able to sell it so well. So that's what I mean by his ignorance is it's a protective bubble. He's insulated by necessity. So there's no reason for someone like him or any of these individuals to be in the know. It would compromise the mission. We're talking about security clearances. We're talking about, if we're right about this, if media is being used as a weapon of Psywar Oh, we're looking at psychological warfare, which means security clearances, means a lot of secrecy, which would define it.
It's funny you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson. Have I ever told you this story before, how he came to Brisbane and I saw him giving one of his performances? I wasn't actually inside the structure. There's this thing in Brisbane right near the river. I forget the name of it, but it's like a semi-outdoor man-made amphitheatre. It's kind of like that. So even if you're not inside, if you're just outside, you can just hear what the performer is saying. And what had happened was some of my viewers, this is back when I was just a YouTuber, I didn't even have johnthebond.com, I was just a YouTuber. Some of my viewers had gotten in touch with me and said, oh, we'd like to meet you. We're going to be in Brisbane. We're from the sunny coast. We're going to be in Brisbane at this time. Do you want to come and meet us? And I was like, sure, why not? So I went to meet them, and they were nice people. And I said to them, what are you doing in Brisbane, by the way? Like, you haven't just come all this way to see me. They're like, no, we haven't just come to see you. We've come to see Neil deGrasse Tyson. And it kind of broke my heart because I said to them, how much are these tickets to see this guy cost? They said like $80 or $100. And this is like 8 years ago. Like 8 years ago, that was a lot of money. You know, this is before the massive inflation we've seen in the last few years. So between the two of them, they spent probably close to $200 to go and listen to this Neil deGrasse Tyson guy. It was heartbreaking. So anyway, I stuck around. So like we walked towards the amphitheatre thing, like after we've caught up and met and whatever, and then spoken for a little bit. It was a nice day, a beautiful day out on the grass near the river. Anyway, so they go towards the amphitheatre. They go to where the ticketed place is to get in. We say our goodbyes, and I decided, Tim, to stick around to see what was going to happen. And what I then heard from this Neil deGrasse Tyson guy, and what I saw in the crowd, shook me to the depths of my miserable soul. And I'll come back and tell you more about that in just a moment. But first, here is a quick word from some of our sponsors here at Bonversations.com.
Adventure, fantasy, romance, action, and plenty for the kids as well. All the escapism you could possibly want, streamed direct to your smart TV device. Bundle our movies and kids package for just $15.99 per month for the first 6 months, and you'll also get access to our comedy catalogue as well, at no extra charge. The Movies and Kids Bundle, with comedy package included, now streaming at Big Media. Vote with your wallet and support Big Media today. See all of these people smiling and having fun? See their white teeth and bright eyes and trim figures? See how they're laughing and dancing and surrounded by friends of all kinds? They're eating the chocolates from the Big Sugar Favourites collection. It comes in a colourful box and there's 50 different bite-sized pieces of gooey goodness in every pack. You'll feel happy as soon as you put the favourites box in your shopping cart. Then you can get home and dive into your favourite chocolates wrapped in wrappers of blue, red, green, orange and more. Vote with your wallet and support Big Sugar today.
I like my burgers zesty fried.
And I like my chicken wraps long and wide.
Throw in some cola, ultra size.
And don't forget a pound of crispy fries.
A family meal for just $29.95.
Support big fast food and you'll feel alive.
Hey, big fast food, do it your way. So you've got the good news and you have a special little one on the way. You know what you need to do now. Find out if it's a boy or a girl. At Big Radiation Clinics, we have the latest in 4D sonogram technology to let you see every nook and cranny of your bundle of joy. More often than not, you'll even get to see your baby kicking and squirming while we take a peek. It's almost as though they can feel the radiation cooking them in real time. So come on down to Big Radiation Clinics and see the baby today. Here, we see a starving African child. His village has no running water, and food is scarce. With World Vision, you can feed him for just $1 per day. Here, we see an independent researcher and content creator living in some little town in Eastern Europe. Times are tough. Now that the pandemic is over and the world has gone back to normal, nobody cares about the truth anymore. He hasn't been able to afford any H or B for months now. You can feed his hedonistic appetite for just US 70 cents per day. Don't let this truth artist starve. Nourish him. Join johnthebond.com today.
All right, thank you, Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, the lovely Elizabeth. 3 people working as one with one goal in mind: to defeat or should I say demolish the Twin Towers?
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan, you talked about the Triangle of Love. Jesse Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the love, man, that's going to supercharge the mega powers and tear down the Twin Towers.
This man, what were your thoughts then?
Oh, yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit into Miss Elizabeth's wrist right there. And when her muscles were torn, my muscles were torn. When her bone was bruised right there, I felt the pain. Hulk Hogan felt the pain, and I can still feel the pain right now. And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh, yeah, right now tonight on prime time, yeah.
Nobody died, nobody got hurt.
Oh, what are you talking about now?
You know you're a liar. You are a false witness to murder.
Just deal with it, man.
Stop it.
Yeah, but who knows if any of this is, like, reality, right?
But you can't really explain that to a normie. Their eyes glaze over. And
Yeah.
Your fridge is actually informing the government on what you're eating.
No.
You're wrong.
Well, I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, I've got a great sense of humour.
Yeah.
We spotted a number of trannies.
I need to take some diction classes. How do I speak like a trad waifu, dignified woman?
Oh, what are you talking about now?
Dodo, stand up. You are no longer extinct.
It just gets mad. It's madness.
Yes, that is the big radiation clinics, our chief sponsor at Bonversations.com. If your wife or girlfriend is pregnant, you have to find out if it's a boy or a girl. You can't wait until the baby's born. Nope, that's old-fashioned style. These days, we need to know straight away so we can go on Twitter and Instagram and tell everybody. So how do you find out? You just go down to big radiation clinics, tell them the JLB sent you, they'll give you a big discount, and they'll radiate the hell out of that baby. So I'm talking with Tim Ozman from the Infinite Plane Society, and we're talking about, do these people actually know what they're doing? So I listened to this Neil deGrasse Tyson guy, and I was watching the crowd's reactions. You know what he was doing up there? And by the way, I took a video, so I'm going to link to this in the show notes for any listeners who are interested. I've got the documents, I've got the footage. Neil deGrasse is just up there, and he's saying stuff like, in the universe there are millions and billions of stars, and there's more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand across the Australian shoreline, or some shit like this. And the crowd's like, ooh. And so, to my mind, it was basically just like these so-called adults. It was mostly adults in the crowd. They're no different to 5-year-old kids looking up to a teacher telling them stuff about the world. Like, you know, like when you're a little kid and you're listening to the teacher because the teachers are grown up and they know lots of stuff, and that's what it was, just a bunch of grown adults listening to some clown telling them a bunch of stuff that he has no evidence for, but they believe all of it because it's like a religion, you see. And that day has stuck with me. And the reason I'm telling you this story, Tim, is because you brought up this Neil deGrasse Tyson guy, and you think he believes what he's saying. You think he fully believes it.
I think he believes what he's saying, and I say he's also somewhat hypnotic. I look at how he uses his hands. He's very entertaining, but and he's been on these these late night TV shows, for example, Stephen Colbert. And when you get that kind of audience, you're looking at, I think, a lot of clapping seals. They don't have a lot of high standards when it comes to saying anything that's going to really, I think, to me, I mean, anyway, what he's saying isn't all that impressive, but they lap it up. And he's entertaining, I give him that. I do think there is something strange about how people regress to, like, kindergarten when they hear someone talking about space in that way. It becomes like story time. To me, it is very much like almost culty at times. I'm not really all that impressed by it, but I am impressed by individuals like Neil deGrasse Tyson and their ability to weave these spells hypnotically.
Yeah, you're right about that. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson, because I've seen it with my eyes, like I just told you. They're able to captivate their audiences, and it's quite impressive when you see it. Credit to him for that, and you're right, it's like story time. These people love these stories of outer space and of other galaxies and other races of creatures that can speak English for some reason, and they're really into all of that. The thing is, Tim Ozman, I used to be big into science fiction myself. I used to love Stargate SG-1. I still remember when I used to believe in space. It was like 10 years ago now that I stopped believing in space, but I do still remember back when I used to believe that we were just a little speck of dust in a huge and expanding universe, and there's potentially life out there. I do still remember what it was like to be like that. Do you still remember, Tim? Do you still remember the good old days of believing in space?
I do. In fact, I only recently, in the last few years, got into science fiction. I read science fiction, I watch a lot of it, and that's because I'm studying the worldview the public has been conditioned to accept. And I find it to be very intriguing, the idea of perpetual evolution by technology, that we have somehow aided nature and supplanted nature, and now we're advancing ourselves by becoming multiplanetary. But the origin of this really goes back to Russian cosmism and the early rocket pioneers, and they were inspired by theosophy, where their whole concept of space, if you look at it, seems to be a replacement for heaven. It's just a utopian scheme for governments to organize their people around. Oh, this is the ideal. So I don't see it as anything more than a form of utopianism that they're selling us on. And a lot of science fiction begins with the premise that man destroys the earth in the 20th century. This is what we do after. So it's always a cautionary tale, condemnation of how we're living right now. But I can't say I don't find it entertaining. And that's one of the powers of this thing. You know, the people you alluded to earlier who say, pay no attention. Like, look, I watch Netflix. I watch Amazon. And I watch these shows with a fine-tooth comb. I go for the details. I pay a lot of attention. So, for example, I was watching Fallout, and there's no words, there's no context. You just see a little spot of blood on the side of a foosball character, and that little frame opened up a whole can of worms. And so what I'm realizing is that if you're not really paying attention, a lot of the stuff just goes by subconsciously and you don't notice it. But I think it still plays a role in your future responses. And so when we say predictive programming, I mean that literally. They are programming us by dumping all this info and imagery and narratives into our subconscious. So I watch this stuff with full awareness that, yeah, this is programming.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this Fallout episode, because I didn't know about that until I read your piece, which I'm going to link to this in the show notes below. I recommend listeners, if they haven't already seen this, go and check this out. And I did link to this also after a YouTube video that I made a couple of days ago. This is called Top 11 Trump Shooting Predictive Programming Examples. This is by Tim Ozman on July 17. So it's at about a week ago you published this. My first question for you is, these 11 items, how many of them came to you through the IPS think tank? Like, how many of these were basically listener or user generated or mentioned?
Pretty much, I believe all of them. I think they all came from our think tank, and some of them we came up with on our own. We were looking, just on the fly, we were looking at Robert De Niro outside of the Trump trial. And I said, there's no way this is just Trump derangement syndrome. There's got to be a deeper meaning to this actor, because I think he's still in a role. And so we start looking into it. We realize that Robert De Niro in movies, in predictive programming, has been foreshadowing Trump as politician. And this goes back to Machete, and it has other references to a few other films, specifically Joker and Taxi Driver, which I put down in that article. So I realized that Robert De Niro being there was foreshadowing for this upcoming head wound on Trump. And I think we were vindicated by this on the 13th.
Well, you've got 11 items in here, and a couple of them I'd heard of before, but there's one in particular I hadn't heard of until I read this piece, and I'm very grateful for the fact that you published this. The second one there is Fallout. Here's what you write. There's this, which, by the way, I didn't even know there was a TV show called Fallout until a few days ago when I read this piece. So here's what you wrote. Fallout. There's a scene in Fallout where Betty Pearson, whom I believe represents Kamala Harris, rigs the election for the overseer, which is like the president, of Vault number 33. After cleaning up a massacre, there is one drop of blood she missed, and it's on the right side of the head of a football figurine that looks like Trump. So in other words, there's a bunch of people, they live in this vault, and they live underground. And for some reason, in one of the vaults, in one of the societies, there was a massacre in this particular episode. They clean up the massacre to put a new bunch of people in there, but there's one spot they didn't clean. For some reason, it's a football game, so you like table football, and for some reason there's this blonde-haired character as a football player, like in the game, and he's got a little drop of red blood on his head. Now, I didn't even know that this show existed, Tim, so I read your piece, and I was like, hold on, what's this Fallout thing? I've never heard of it. So I went looking for the episode. Turns out it was episode number 5. So anyway, I went and watched the episode, and I found other things in that episode where I was like, what the hell is going on here? But before I tell you what I found about Elvis, you tell me, when did you first see this Fallout TV show?
I just started watching it as soon as it came. I think in April and May I started watching it. And what made me watch this immediately was the name of the director, Jonathan Nolan. Because Jonathan Nolan's work has been strongly represented with this theme of nuclear fallout, end of the West. His brother, Christopher Nolan, did Oppenheimer. So you have the nuke and fallout in sequence. You have their connection to Westworld. So these two individuals, and the Batman movies, they're very well represented in the realm of predictive programming. So I would consider these two to be in the class of those in the know. I would call them metascriptors, that they are consciously creating art to supplant future fake news. That's what I think these individuals are a part of.
So this particular series, Fallout, came out, I believe, in April of this year. So we're talking a few months ago. This red dot of blood on the Trump-looking football kid, had you or your think tank noticed that prior to the Trump so-called shooting a week or so ago? Like, is this something that you guys had noticed and mentioned before the shooting, or was it only after the shooting that people noticed, hold on a second, what are the chances of this?
No, I was watching and I saw it, and I was with some friends and I said, sorry, I have to stop the movie. I rewinded it. I had to photograph it off the screen because you can't screen cap with Amazon on your phone. And so I noticed this back in, I think it was in April or May, whenever I watched it the first time. And I put out an article that said, I caught some foreshadowing of the incoming Trump head wound on Fallout. And then I further analyzed the significance of Betty Pearson and connected her to this broader narrative of this incoming head wound that we've been expecting. So no, I called it out before and specifically said this is referencing, because what I had said was there's going to be a wound on the right side of his head based on all the predictions. And I'm solely basing it on predictions. And then moreover, in my predictive programming analysis, I said, get ready for President Kamala, because there's a number of Netflix movies where you have this person being introduced to us. For example, in this character, Betty Pearson, you have basically black female leader, or the movie Civil War I just watched. And they have this Trump character who's obviously, the president's obviously meant to be Trump, and they have to take him out. And they specifically bring a black woman, a soldier, to take him out. So this is a repeated dynamic. And so I said, this is going to foreshadow something with Trump, and then Kamala's next. And look where we are right now. Biden just dropped out following Trump's blood on the side of his head, and now it's all about Kamala Harris.
Okay, so you're telling me, and this is quite phenomenal, that you noticed this a couple of months, like beforehand, before the Trump thing. You noticed it, you wrote an article about it, so basically saying, hey, this show, this Fallout show, there's a scene that appears to be foreshadowing a Trump head wound, and you published that, and your readers and viewers consumed that content prior to the so-called shooting a week or so ago. Like, what you're telling me, this is really amazing stuff, is that you noticed this and wrote about it or spoke about it before it actually happened.
Oh, yeah. And if you go to my minds.com account and you find my original post where I have the blood spot, I break down how this is going to be the sequence. And I'm basing it not on any guesses, but solely on predictive programming. And for example, this Robert De Niro thing, because this is important. When I saw him on the world stage, I said, this has got to mean something. Well, I didn't even know this stuff. I didn't know Joker, the movie Joker, where Robert De Niro gets shot in the head by the Joker on TV. I didn't know that movie was based on Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro is the assassin. And the movie Taxi Driver inspired the assassin that shot Reagan. So you see these connections here, and it goes deeper and deeper the more you look. But what we have here is this Robert De Niro representing the assassin and the assassinated, and then and this gets even better, because in the 2010 movie Machete, he's foreshadowing Trump before Trump was even running for office. So before Trump was even in politics, you have a character playing future Trump. And if you caught the speech Robert De Niro's character was giving as a senator, the xenophobic speech he was giving before he was shot, it matches Trump's speech. Because before he was shot, he was talking about too many illegal immigrants, and he was pointing at a chart. And he specifically looked at this chart that said 20 million illegal immigrants, and he said the chart saved his life. So it's an anti-immigrant speech that preceded the shooting, just like in the movie, foreshadowing it. And again, a movie coming out before Trump was even a politician. So what I'm saying is that Donald Trump on the world stage, as we see him, is a prefabricated character. No different than any crisis actor, just a lot more elaborate.
Well, what I'm going to do is, for the listeners, I'm going to insert a clip from that film Machete. So this is Robert De Niro, and he's a politician of some kind, and he's talking about, among other things, the immigration issue. Let's take a quick look at this.
Everywhere I go in this glorious state, people are talking about change. I say, why change? This is a great state founded on the principles of liberty. I don't want to change that. Our rightful citizens are hardworking Americans who earn their paychecks by the grit of their guts and the sweat of their brow. I don't want to change that. Yeah! Change. That's what they want. Change. Change the laws. Open the doors. Red Rover. Let the terrorists come over. The jingle jangle of pennies in your pocket because the scavengers, the leeches, the parasites are walking away with your money while you're left with the change. So I want to say one more thing. Who are you going to vote for? Up there! I saw someone fight from up there!
So that's Robert De Niro in this film called Machete, which, again, until a week or two ago, Tim, I didn't even know there was a film called Machete starring Robert De Niro. I didn't know that. There's so many TV shows and movies. I've never even heard about them until there's some event in the news and then someone says, oh, that's like what happened in the TV show. That's like what happened in the movie. And then I'll be like, okay, I didn't even know that movie existed. So there's no way that I can use this for foreshadowing. But you're saying that you can. So in the case of Machete, is this another one where you or your think tank had seen it, noticed what could be seen as foreshadowing, and then talked about it or wrote about it in some capacity prior to the Trump so-called shooting?
Yeah, and here's how this happened. I saw that movie when it came out, but it didn't come to mind with the Trump shooting. I didn't make the connection between De Niro and Trump until De Niro was hanging out in front of Trump's courthouse while Trump was on trial. And immediately after looking at the different Robert De Niro connections, then we saw that. Then we saw, oh, look, he's foreshadowing the character of Trump. And he's done so in a number of films. And then you add in the Joker and Taxi Driver connections. And this is layered, but every Trump trial has connections to Joker. Like when he was arrested on 4/4/2023, they were filming Joker 2 outside of the courthouse. And this was on the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger. And again, it was on 4/4. These Joker connections, the Batman connections, follow the predictive programming patterns, foreshadowing the news. And I mentioned the Nolan brothers connected with the Batman Joker franchise. So we're looking at these repeated themes here. Then you find out in the Joker movie, Robert De Niro gets shot in the head on TV. Well, again, the Joker movie is based on Taxi Driver, where De Niro's the assassin. And it inspired a real shooting of Reagan. So it sounds convoluted at first, but when you layer it, you can see there's actually a story here. And I would not have looked into my memory banks at the movie Machete, which I thought was terrible, if we weren't aware of the structure of media itself. And I said, if Robert De Niro's outside of the courthouse, then his movie roles are likely being recalled in our subconscious, or they're being referred to in this, quote, meta script in some meaningful way. And the evidence bears that out. It did, in fact, happen in that way. That, yes, we can reverse engineer this stuff, is what I'm saying.
So I've just been scrolling through your Minds.com, which, by the way, I've never used this Minds platform. So scrolling through it now, I'm going through your... It's kind of like a feed, I guess. It's kind of similar to Twitter. Is that the idea? Is you sort of post these
Yes.
relatively brief things. It's the user interface is different to Twitter, but it appears to operate similar. Is that basically how it is with Minds?
Yeah, the only reason I use Minds is that it's not going to ever be censored. And what I do is I take screen caps and links to anything I'm going to talk about, and I put it there. And this is how I'm able to give credit to people for comments, whatever platform they're on, whether it's email, Twitter, or YouTube. And I use this as my stack of notes for each day. But if you follow it back, it's in chronological order. You'll see every single thing that we ever talk about or reference timestamped. So scrolling back on this, you can find that before the Trump shooting, the day before, we were looking at Atlantic articles where it had a Trump head wound kind of designed into the artwork, but it specifically had his ear clipped, the top of his ear where he got shot. So we were talking about predictive programming for this Trump thing up until the last minute. And again, with the Robert De Niro thing, we came across that by looking at this with this particular view in mind, that this person is not just a regular Trump deranged syndromed Hollywood person, but he's there with symbolic intent. And what is the symbolic intent? He's the assassin. He's the guy that inspired the assassin. He's again, it's what I would consider to be a form of propagandizing us.
Well, I'm scrolling back now through your feed, and I've scrolled back hundreds of posts here, and I've still only just made it to July 14, so it appears as though you're posting quite a lot on this Minds platform. Is it popular? Is there much traction or traffic over at Minds.com? Because I'm telling you, man, I've literally, from my memory, I don't think I've ever used, I certainly haven't posted there, I don't have an account there. I don't think I've ever scrolled there. This is news to me. Is this a popular place? Like, who even runs Minds.com? I'm going to look that up. But you tell me, are you getting much traffic through your Minds.com feed?
I think a few years ago, there were some people hopeful that Minds would be some kind of decentralized social media platform, and it had a lot of people hyping it up. But I don't think it lived up to it. But I have found it to be personally useful and dependable. So I don't recommend it to anyone. I don't know what its lifespan is. But as far as having a place where I can just do a nonstop 24/7 data dump, this is a very necessary component to what I do because it allows me to have receipts.
Well, as you said, it is time-stamped, and I can see here that prior to July 13, you were posting a lot. When did you start using Minds? Like, when did you get into this?
I think I started using Minds in like 2018 or 2019. I was one of the early adopters, and it just never really became what it could be. It has certain functionalities, but as far as a feed, I found it to be very dependable, and they have made minor improvements. So I'm very happy about it being there. So anything I say, it could not only be fact checked, but you can actually scroll back and see the dates. Like July 10th, the day before the shooting, I posted a link where Biden said, "It's time to put Trump in the bullseye." Scrolling down a little further back, you'll find repeated instances of things that we've referenced that have been foreshadowing. And foreshadowing is a great way of describing it when we talk about predictive programming, because I think we're looking at a literary technique. And it's literary, it's marketing, it's repetition. But I think my focus lately has been trying to understand how this all makes sense without trying to include anything higher, as far as like anything unknown or supernatural or perhaps higher technology. I'm trying to understand this. Could this all be performed from down here on Earth with what we know, as far as what media is? And I think it can be, but you have to redefine how you see media. I think media has to be looked at in a completely different light than how the mainstream people tend to look at it.
Well, that's a good way to wrap up the first part of the call, because what I wanted to get you on to discuss was this idea of synchromysticism, which you have declared to be deader than Mandela effect, which you're very good sometimes with the sloganeering, man. That was very clever. Deader than Mandela effect, you said, is sync, and you think predictive programming explains these apparent foreshadowings and connections. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. So in the second part of the call, I want to go through some of the coincidences, the so-called coincidences that I've found to do with this Donald Trump character. Not just the shooting, but the broader story of Donald Trump. I found some remarkable stuff that I can see why people believe that there are humans planning this. I can see, because it doesn't look like just mere coincidence. It looks like there might be somebody scripting it. But then again, the Sync Book people, who were very popular in terms of this coverage of these so-called coincidences, those were the people. Those were the OGs, the Sync Book people. And most of them have disappeared, sadly, from the scene. But I still have their books, and I'm grateful for what they put out there. And I feel like I'm the only person, apart from maybe Christopher Knowles in the Secret Sun blogspot, apart from him, I feel like I'm the only person defending the synchromystic perspective. And what better person to have this conversation with than Tim Ozman, who has apparently, him and his think tank, have predicted, by using their analysis of the movies and the TV shows, have predicted that there would be some kind of Trump head wound. And we haven't even discussed Jurassic Liars and some of his predictions. So we'll come back and talk about that and so much more in the second part of the call, which will be available to people on Bonversations.com or on the IPS Patreon, which they can join for as little as, how much is it, Tim, to join your Patreon? What's the lowest tier?
The lowest is $1 for notifications, $5 for notifications plus archives directly to your inbox.
All right, so for people who join on the $5 tier or above, you'll get access to not just the second part of this call, which we're about to record, and which I will spend a couple of hours editing to insert the different clips and make it all sound nice and beautiful. This is a fantastic product, I believe. And you get access to it and all of our previous Bonversations with Tim Ozman if you go and join his IPS Patreon for $5 a month or more. And as part of doing that, Tim, what else do they get? They get access to the Discord, the think tank, the other predictions you guys are making. Tell them what else do they get if you come and join the Patreon.
Yeah, you have direct access to a 24/7 think tank of other Metascript analysts, fake news deconstructionists, and what we do 24/7 is we pull together our knowledge and our findings and try to arrive at the best explanations for what we're seeing. So you get all of that. You get the community, you get the archives, and you get the live stream notifications to stay a part of it, all for $5 a month or less.
And in doing so, they're also supporting independent media, which people complain about. Oh, CNN, Fox News, the mainstream media, they're all lies, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, who is supporting independent media? The people who support Bonversations, the people who support Tim Ozman. There's a few other independent content creators there who get some support. They're the supporters who are making this possible. This independent media only happens because there are some people who support it. So if you're one of them, then move on to the IPS Patreon or to bonversations.com to get the second part of this call, where Tim and I are finally going to sit down and go through this list of these Donald Trump so-called coincidences. He says predictive programming. I say sync. We're going to sit down and have a civil, mature conversation about it. And hopefully by the end, we all come out, if nothing else, entertained. And what is wrong with entertainment? So on that note, I'll give Tim Ozman the final thoughts for the first part of this call, Bonversations number 51. This has been part 1 on July 25, 2024. Tim, you and I are coming back to record our discussion, finally, sync versus predictive programming in just a moment. But for the public audience who won't support you and won't support me and therefore don't get the second hour of this call, for them, you get the final thoughts. Tim, take it away.
Well, I would highly recommend they join and definitely become a part of this, because what we're doing is creating a what I would consider to be the third branch of media. You have mainstream, you have alternative, but what we're doing is very much apart from all of that. And so I would just say, join us if you think this is an important conversation. If you're interested in predictive programming or any of these things we talk about, this is the cutting edge. So I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot more people on the inside.
You've been listening to Bonversations. We appreciate and thank all of the supporters who make this possible. Now have yourself a lovely day.
How dare you? I'm really suspicious of trees.
Hello there, John. This is Donald J. Trump. I just wanted to let you know your content here on johnlebon.com is just absolutely tremendous. Really, I gotta say, my wife Melania and I have been consuming hours and hours of it. We just love it. We can't get enough of it, frankly.
And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh, yeah, right now, tonight, on prime time.